let's look at some things we can do. I'm going to show you how to do a combination of 3 different things in parquetry work, which is pretty easy to do. Again, all you need is an X-Acto knife, a straight edge, a cutting mat to cut on, some veneer, and some tape. So it's a real household type thing to do. I'm going to start by taking my straight edge and putting it on my piece of veneer. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife, and I'm going to start by going with the grain. Now the knife, I'm not going to try to make this cut all at one time. I'm going to do it through a series of passes. So the first pass, my tip just barely scored the wood, but by doing that, it now has created a path on my next path that it'll follow and not be influenced by the grain. So I'll cut it again, a little bit deeper, and probably one more pass, and maybe even one more. And that's vital, is that I didn't try in the first pass to cut all the way through the veneer, because the tip is going to follow the path of least resistance. And by making multiple passes, I have a lot less resistance for the grain. Okay, so once you've got your bark edge off, from there, come back and cut strips exactly the same width as your straight edge. And I'll do this in a multiple of 4 to start with. Okay, so there's one. Keep the knife perpendicular on the edge of my straight edge. This blade flexes, but for what we're doing right now, the flexing, the angling isn't going to create as much of a concern for me, because I'm just going through that one layer. But if I were to take all of these pieces and put my X-Acto knife on top and try to cut, by the time I get from the top piece to the bottom piece, there's no way I can keep it perpendicular. And in that case, I would prefer to go to something that's more rigid, like a saw like this, or a Stanley utility knife, which isn't as flexible to be able to get from one side to the other. And I'm going to cut 4 of these too, and then that'll give us a bunch of things we can play with. So really, to start the parquetry with veneer, just simple strips, however wide your straight edge is. Then you could cut them in, you need to cut them at least in groupings of 2 pieces, 4 pieces, 6 pieces, 8 pieces, and so on. And you know, a lot of veneers cut well with a knife, and some veneers don't cut well at all with a knife. Oak. If you notice, you can probably not see down here, but if you look at my stack, there's absolutely no oak. Certain exotics like wingy and purple heart, and those are just a nightmare to cut. Teak is not a whole lot of fun to cut. Absolutely. It's a nightmare. Now, it cuts well on a scroll saw, and it would cut well if you packetize it and you go to your table saw. But right now, to try to cut this with this one knife, I would do everything I could to stay away from it. Okay, now we've got 4 strips of each, and obviously at this point in time, I'm going to tape them together. I'm going to tape them together every other color. Edge to edge. Let your fingers pull them together as tightly as you can. We always want to put tape on the same side. So I don't want to have tape on this side and then turn around and have tape on the other side. So always have one side is what we call our tape side, and one side is what we call our working side, our visual side. The tape side ultimately will be the good face. This is the one that people will see when it comes out of the press. The back side will be the glue down side. These don't have to go back in any order. You don't have to have the first cut, second cut, and third cut from your maple pieces. They can go in any arrangement in any order. Okay, so we've got all of our pieces taped together. Okay, nice tight seams. They look really good. No gaps at all. All the tape is on one side. Now the great thing in doing veneer is to have a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle, because with this 30, 60, 90 degree triangle, I can do all kinds of different parquetry work with it. And to start with, I'm going to take the 90 degree angle and I'll line it up to the bottom edge of my veneer. I don't see as well as I used to, so I'll put my straight edge on my veneer and then line my triangle up off of my straight edge, and then that way I'm sure I'm perpendicular to the bottom edge. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to cut at a right angle across the grain through all these pieces. This is a maple piece down here, and it's got a pretty good grain. Maple's the best veneer wood there is. It cuts well with a knife. It cuts great on the skull saw, so that one didn't tear out much. But if it were a piece of cherry or mahogany, it might have split. And in that case, I would have added an extra piece in here. I've specifically chosen 4 of each of these. Once I've got a square edge, I can come back now, and with my straight edge again, I'll just line it right up to this bottom edge and come back and make strips the exact same width as my straight edge. Now I'm going to take these, and obviously when I turn them around, I end up with a checkerboard. To tape these back together, obviously if I wanted to make a real checkerboard, I'd need to have 4 more of these pieces cut. What I'm going to do, though, is because I can see this side, I'm temporarily going to go through and make sure that my corners line up exactly where they should, and put just a couple pieces of tape on it. I'll come back to this side, and I'll run strips all the way across the seams. And I can come back and take this off. Now this one row in here, I didn't pull it together as tightly as I should have, so there's a little bit more of a gap there. But that'd be easy to correct. Because you can see how easy it would be to make a pretty accurate and pretty square checkerboard.